Why do Western men go to Thailand or Southeast Asia? Now, right away, you might dismiss the question as silly. It is pretty obvious why single men go to Thailand, why they choose Asia as their holiday destination. It could not be more obvious because it is easier there and because money rules. In this video, I want to expand on this and talk about other very relevant factors and why, for many, women alone are not the reason to go to Asia or Thailand. If you have never considered going to, you will come to realize that there are many more benefits and that maybe a trip is worth your time and money after all. Number one, experience the gold standard. First of all, in terms of nightlife and dating, Southeast Asia and Thailand is the absolute gold standard. I mean, I cannot think of any other place anywhere worldwide that comes even close. And this has one major benefit. You experience what's possible. After your trip, you come to realize what you thought was an okay life back home isn't so exciting after all. Now we can debate as to whether this is good or not. Maybe you were content before and now you're dissatisfied with your life. Now, in terms of business, going to Thailand is kind of like the equivalent of hanging out with Elon Musk for a few days. You know, perhaps you're working 9 to 5 and you have certain ideas in your mind as to what is possible financially, business wise. And then you hang out with Elon and you get to see what's actually possible versus what you thought were the limits. Realizing what's possible, that's the precise reason why all of this matters. But you might ask, why go to Thailand if you only end up being unhappy about your life afterwards? Now, I personally think it's better to come to that realization sooner rather than later. You don't want to be 95 years old and suddenly realize that you could have had much hotter women or that you could have had much more fun and that what you thought was good and realistic, for example, the average women that you might meet, was in fact way less than what was actually attainable for you. So I think it's much better to come to that realization as soon as possible, because then you can still do something about it. And one trip to Thailand is usually enough to have your mind blown. Now, number two, I call it, what do I call it? Powerful environment. Second reason is because going to Southeast Asia to Thailand is a shortcut. You can work on changing yourself, or you could simply put yourself into a completely different environment and boom, the change is almost instant. Now, I don't mean that you will turn from being, let's say, a failure to being a super success overnight. That is not what I mean at all. What I mean is that for most of us in our regular life, we are typically held back by our environment, one way or another. Think about your work. Maybe you see people see you as a certain type of person, so it will be difficult for you to change or change your style, haircut, whatever, right? I'm just mentioning small examples here. Even if you wanted to, there will probably be some discomfort about it or some downsides to actually changing. Now you go to Thailand and you're in a completely different environment. Nobody knows you. It's a clean slate. There's not going to be your neighbors that see you bringing home a girl or somebody else that knows you or a relative seeing you do this or that. In short, there are very few or even no constraints in terms of the environment, in terms of what you want to do. Now, in fact, if you don't party, if you don't take a girl home, you will be the odd one. Whereas at home, maybe the neighbor would see it or relatives would see it or this or that, right? Most people don't realize, but the environment is incredibly powerful. And here is another very, very common example. You have low sex drive. Maybe you're thinking, I have low testosterone, and that there's some sort of problem you need to address. This is a very common question that I get, or when people email me saying, I have low sex drive, low testosterone, I don't know what to do. I say, before you do anything about it, put yourself into the right environment. If you live in some cow village and have no interest in women, I say, do not waste time researching based on the assumption that you have a problem. Instead, what you should do is take the shortcut and test it out in the field. And the field will be an environment with lots of options to meet and date women. And then you know for sure if you actually have a problem or if the problem was just the environment. In many cases, there's no problem. The only problem is the wrong environment. How powerful is environment? Well, you will realize that as soon as you step foot off the plane. It doesn't matter if it's your first time in Thailand or if you've been there 6 months ago. You step foot off the plane and you are a different person. You can feel it. Number three, enhanced privacy. I think that's another major benefit. Say, for example, you can in fact meet attractive women where you live, but then you also have, second thoughts about it, because what if you don't like the girl that you meet anymore after a few dates or a few weeks? She knows where you live. It's harder to meet other women. Maybe you do online dating in your hometown and dozens of people that know you see you online, or the people you work with see you on those dating sites. When you go to a different country to meet and date women there, everything is completely on your terms. If you want to stay in touch with any of the women you meet, you stay in touch. But it's on your terms. You finish that trip, you go back home, and that's the cutoff. You decide if you want to stay in touch, if you want to continue talking to the girl. And it's not going to be a random girl showing up at your doorstep just because she's needy or clingy. If you do have issues with very clingy or needy girls during your trip, it's also very easy because you can switch to a different hotel, to a different condo, no problem, all super easy. How do you do that in your home country? It is next to impossible.